This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
You are not a random blob of cells. Every part of you brims with intention. Your heart doesn't question why it beats. Your lungs don't get bored pumping air. Your hair doesn't stop growing because you're having a bad day. Each subatomic particle you consist of knows what role it plays in the great coming together as you. If none of your building blocks waver about their purpose, why should you? Deep down, you know there is someone you're meant to be. Every so often, you catch a glimpse of that someone. It happens when you speak up for yourself, even when it's difficult. When you're proud of a job well done, no matter what others say. When you do things for the love of doing them, not because you're expected to. It happens in those unexpected moments when you look in the mirror and see not your perceived flaws, but a person you're amazed of being. Is that really me? Yes, that's really you. Valeria Teles interviews Chris Sirac, the author of Be You, The Journey of Self-Realization. Chris Sirac has a passion for turning sophisticated topics into accessible, meaningful, and inspiring experiences. With an extensive background in design, psychology, and tech, he has spearheaded empathy-based design in education and business environments alike. In private, Chris enjoys meditating, playing tennis, and writing music. He resides in Los Angeles, California. Meet Chris at sirac.com. Here's the interview with Chris Sirac.
In your own words, who is Chris Sirac?
Well, that's an amazing question, Valeria. I think it goes towards identity, and much of BU is about releasing that mental, mind-made identity. So it's more of a question of what's remaining of who I think I am. I think it would be just experiencing oneself outside of the mental construct. And as essentially, we've heard of the term vessel for life. So I hope I'm a vessel for life passing through me and taking me with it.
Wow, I love that. Like I said to you off rec, I keep saying that I love your work. It's just so clear, so clear.
Oh, thank you.
So I have these warm-up questions, as you know. I guess the first one I'll be asking you is something I read in your book. You say, we are not our thoughts. You just mentioned now, the mental construct. You can spend most of your life lost in thought. And that is so true. So my question is, what are thoughts and what is the mind?
Well, the mind is, that's a great question. The mind is a tool, and it's an amazing tool. And I think really what this is about and what BU is about is finding the balance of using the mind for what it's good for, which is to plan, to organize, to analyze. It's an amazing tool for developing skills and memory. And so it's great for those things, but it's not so great for other things. One of the greatest things it struggles with is the unknown, which is life. So,
Yeah. Right.
the mind's tendency to want to fill in the blanks and project into the unknown. And that's why it takes us out of the present moment all the time. It's always looking for the next unknown moment. Even when we're in the shower, we can't enjoy the water coming down on our heads. It's the mind is drifting to the next unknown moment and trying to project something into it, even if it has to make it up completely. So there's this discomfort that the mind has with the unknown because it's designed to know things. That's what it does. So if we live by that, we're always, trying to achieve certain outcomes, and all of it is just projection and never really experiencing ourselves right now. And so it's really about learning using the mind for what it's good for, and not using it for what it's not designed to do.
Yes, I love your answer. Would you say that all fears come from the mind?
Well, the vast majority, there is fear, but the example I mentioned in the book is unless you're staring a tiger in the eye,
Right?
Right, that's you're going to experience fear, and that's real fear that's happening. It's in front of you, and you need to respond to that. But most of the other fear comes from basically this open canvas, almost open permission that the mind has to project into the future whatever it wants, and also think about the past and regrets and try to connect the dots of what would have happened if you'd done something differently or made different decisions. And the fear that's kind of virtual fear, and it's mind generated fear, but that's most of our fear, and it doesn't really exist.
So when you speak of the mind being this tool, powerful tool of navigation within this reality, the question arises about what is there that is not the mind that we can use instead?
Right, exactly. And that's a great core question. So what happens when we come out of that mind? Well, I can explain it. Everyone can experience it. And there's different ways to go about it as well. But essentially, and I call this thought awareness, when we become aware of thoughts, and there's simple exercises that can help one experience this, then we disidentify with those thoughts. So clearly, to your previous question, we're not our thoughts. If we can become aware of a thought, which happens at that moment whenever we drift off into thoughts, and we get lost in thought. And there comes a moment where we become aware that we just drifted off. And that's a moment of disidentification. We're no longer the thought. And so obviously we're not the thoughts. The mind wanders and we get lost in them all the time. But that's just a muscle that we can develop so that we don't get lost in it so often, if at all. And then learn to not be a slave to our thoughts, but to actually be able to experience them, observe them, but not believe every thought that pops up and let it take us away.
True. You actually said something. I'm already getting into the topic of the book. That's the second section, but let me see if I can find here. I love the way you say it. You say it is not the number of times you come back to your breath that restrains your brain and weakens your mind's pull. It is the number of times, right, that we come back to it. So it's not really about not trying too hard to be thoughts, but being aware enough to see the movement back into a space that we are not attached to thoughts. And this is a practice for life, isn't it, Chris?
Yes, exactly. And that really, it points us back once we come out of our strong identification with thoughts. We realize we don't actually live in our heads. It's like I mentioned, it's a tool to navigate certain situations, but really we live in our body, which is, it's not a woo-woo statement. This is our presence, is our essence of being, is being in our body. And that's where the wisdom lies. And that's where the trust and the comfort and the deeper knowing that isn't a mental construct, that doesn't need others to agree with you. It's your own truth that comes from within, that doesn't require comparison or outcomes and all that. And so that's where trust, that's where permanent joy, permanent happiness comes from.
And I'm wondering about this, if imagination that comes from intuition, because I feel like they are sort of similar. The quality of thoughts coming from intuition, they feel to me like as if they were being imagined. So I'm wondering if this is a different kind of thoughts, imagination, and intuition.
Yes. So, I mean, ultimately, and again, the brain is a great conveyor. That's how it makes our heart beat. It coordinates our breathing. And there's certain communicative aspects that aren't just these outcome oriented thoughts. And so when we hear our inner voice speaking to us, our inner GPS, that of course, these are still thoughts at some level, but they feel very different. There's no, fear and anxiety and questioning. You don't second guess those messages that come to you.
Yeah.
There's a deep trust that comes with it, and so they feel different. And all the worry and the comparison just falls away.
How did you come to these deep understandings about yourself and life?
So that's a great question. One of the things I get asked a lot is was there a turning point? Very often people hit a wall or they hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And then there's, some kind of shift that happens. That wasn't the case with me. There was a point of rapid acceleration, but it wasn't related to just not seeing hitting rock bottom and kind of getting into a bad place first in order to come out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that was. It brought about a lot of change in my life for sure. But it was just kind of starting to see clearly and seeking, and one thing led to the next. And I think the most important thing is we have to recognize that there's a process. And what I liken this to is kind of a play, or going to the movies even. Mm-hmm. Usually in the first half hour, the protagonist hasn't yet recognized that they're going to be a hero and take charge of their own destiny and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So these bad things, quote unquote bad things happen, but as an audience, we don't stop, say projector person stop the video. We don't break down and get lost in the drama of it. We know this is a story that's unfolding, and that this will lead to a greater the path revealing itself. So I think with just a simple attitude of let's see what this leads to, then we don't get caught up in the individual moments so much and the drama of it. So I've always had that mindset, and I think that helped me recognize that something was happening with me, and I was just gonna roll with it.
It sounds to me like this sincere, honest desire to know the unknown. In a way, you're just open to it.
Yes, and so much of, and again, the mind tries to cover up the unknown and come up with all kinds of planning and expectations to project into that not knowing and create a sense of knowing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. Anyone with a little maturity, and this happens to everyone. You could even say, midlife crisis is kind of the common mainstream concept, where you realize, well, all the things we plan and expect, life never quite turns out that way. It takes turns and twists that we can't predict. Some good, some bad, but life has its own way of unfolding, and anything we try to steer, it just gets in the way of that natural unfolding.
And I often use nature as my reference. You actually mentioned that in the book too, under the insights. Yeah, it's one of my biggest teachers, although everything is, but nature is just the ultimate.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I could speak a whole hour on nature and how. Mm-hmm.
Right, that we are nature, right, Chris? Because some people, we are part of nature, but I actually see it as nature itself. We are nature.
Yeah. And that's really what the mind does. It creates a separateness.
Yeah.
And that's a big chapter in the book, is this idea that we're separate from each other, separate from the tree and just the expression of life.
Right.
That we don't see ourselves as one with it. And so much of our struggles come from this separateness.
So talk to me for a moment about authenticity. What authenticity is, and what are some of the greatest misconceptions about being authentic?
Right. Okay. Wow. I love these questions. Well, everyone has their own unique blueprint that deep inside, most of the time it only comes through as these occasional intuitive hits that we call them.
Yeah.
But that's because we're so mind dominated that we're not in stronger communication with that inner voice. But it's there in every single situation, every single day, not just the big decisions, but the small decisions, that there's acting in alignment with our true self, our authentic self, and not acting in alignment. And all too often, these outside voices that we're conditioned to listen to, they win, right? We let them win. And they make us behave in certain ways, which then results in stuck feelings that aren't really authentic. So the wonderful thing about being the authenticness, the telltale sign is really that your truth does not require other people's approval, and your truth does not clash with other people's truths. And that's really a wonderful place of peace and stability. There's a permanent knowing what's right for you contained in that. It's really a wonderful place to connect to, and ultimately that's where you lose the sense of separateness to others, and that's where we really recognize our unity as expressions of life. So I would say there's no real misconception about authenticity. I mean, people maybe are led to believe that there's some kind of achievement, some outcome that needs to be pursued. And then when you have that and you're there, then suddenly your life is perfect and happy and forever and all that. And
right. The destination, right.
Exactly. And the important thing to remember there too is that you can experience joy from, and should experience joy from, achieving things. It's not like you should, block yourself from that either.
Right.
It's just to recognize that is not a permanent kind of joy. Life continues, the flow of life, it continues to unfold, and some things will be pleasant and others will be unpleasant. But whatever we experience, it's not meant to be held on to. We don't need to cling to it. Because the clinging then immediately converts a happy experience into the fear of losing it,
right.
And so we can never really enjoy life, and really every experience ultimately is the joy of living, even if some things are more pleasant and other things are a little unpleasant. It's life flowing through us, and then we really start to flow with life.
Would you say that even this idea of being you, being us, and being authentic, it's also a movement, a dance of life, flowing in and out of that?
Yeah, I completely. And, there are, again, perfectly fine uses for the mind, such as, if you need to book a flight next week, that you plan accordingly. And these are practical matters. Right. And we are physical, in the physical beings. And so there's the practical aspect to that requires some foresight and some planning, and that's perfectly fine. But when it goes into matters of experiencing your beingness, that's when the mind starts to come out of the present moment. And that's where you lose then your connection to the magic, to the flow of everything just coming and going. And finding joy in that coming and going is the permanence. That's the permanent joy. Right. And not wanting, I got to surround myself with the things that make me happy, that I want, that I like, right. And then avoid the things that I don't like. Then life will always be a roller coaster.
I love your book, though, the way it is structured, the clarity, the way it's written, everything about it. I absolutely love the wisdom, the deep wisdom you have there. I'll be asking you specific questions in a moment. Before that, it sounds very spiritual to me. What is spirituality to you?
Yeah, I would say, and one of the motivators we mentioned this when we talked earlier is to steer clear of the type of language that it can often be in the way. It becomes a barrier to a lot of people assimilating the wisdom.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's deeply spiritual, but I always say that, BU is the most spiritual book ever written without being spiritual.
Right.
So that was really the hope, because I had experiences that people who shared information with me and books and other material, and I tried to understand it, but there was, I couldn't see past some of the vocabulary. So I think we're all pulling from the same place. It's the presentation that is different, different angle, different rapper, different personality that's doing the talking, but the wisdom is ultimately the same, and we're just reformulating it for different times and different audiences. So yes, spirituality you could probably say is the science of being authentic, because that is being authentic. It feels individual at first, or it may sound individual, but it very quickly leads to the recognition that we're all connected and that we're all one. So I'd say it starts out with a personal journey and then ends in the infinite.
The way you structure the book, part 3, you have the big picture of being you. And there you include 2 words that I absolutely love for some reason, freedom and love. Talk to me for a moment about these 2 aspects of life, if you can do that without the mind getting away with that concept.
Yeah. So I'll start with the love part first. And there is an unbelievable love for creation that is behind everything that exists. So whatever the powers are, that there's a joy that is inherent to everything that exists, because that's what was required to go into it. Even as humans, we don't create things there's no motivation. We create, ideally out of joy, with the intent to put something, to give life to something. So there's an incredible deep joy for everything that exists, that goes into its creation. So we can, not just tap into that, but become it when we essentially when we remove our thoughts, the ones that get in the way, not the useful, practical ones, but the ones that make us think we've got it figured out, or that we're trying to steer towards a desired outcome. That's the stuff that disconnects us from connecting with that unbelievable love that is at the root of our very existence.
Yeah.
Yes. So
1,000 times, a billion times to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then, and then freedom, it's really required. Everyone has their own journey, and their own their own blueprint that is meant to unfold, and that has to happen from a place of allowing everyone to be and unfold as they want, and primarily allowing oneself, because we are our own greatest critics, where we have layers of conditioned behavior and beliefs that make us think we have to go down certain paths or believe certain things, and every single belief is an infringement, if you will, on this true freedom of being, and not feeling like there is a truth and then everything else is untrue, that we need to control our environment and rid ourselves of the things that feel unpleasant or that don't fit our plan of getting somewhere. And like you said before, there's an enslavement to that, and all of that falls away and the freedom of not being attached to these beliefs and these thoughts is just, indescribable. It's beyond anything that we can create in the physical around us. This internal freedom.
So you wrote the book titled Be You, The Journey of Self-Realization. How did you become a writer, and what was the primary inspiration and intention of writing your book, Chris?
Yeah, great question. I never thought about it. And really, that is a deeper response than it initially may sound. I was journaling, I was seeking, and out of that, in a series of very amazing experiences that made me realize at some point that what I was capturing on paper was turning into a book. And so it was more of and this is really the magic of letting life lead, is that we then kind of realize, oh, I'm writing a book. Or, I'm doing this or that. And that, that's the human aspect of applying labels. Yeah. But ultimately we were expressing ourselves and being ourselves. And then we kind of suddenly recognize, oh, this is this or that. But ultimately the letting life lead is the most important thing. So people ask, about what led me to write the book all the time. And I always respond that it wasn't me writing the book, right, but that it was the book writing itself through me. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. And that's, I can't tell you how, if it was me writing, I would immediately sense that because nothing was working, nothing was flowing. I would labor over one sentence for, 10 minutes and it wouldn't go anywhere. So that's when I knew I had to get out of my headspace and reground myself and allowing this to flow. And then it was really as if I was a first-time reader who's reading the book. I was reading these words. I would sit back after writing a paragraph and really be blown away by my own words because they really weren't my own.
Do you ever use the word God?
That's a great question. I was raised Catholic, so that was a strong presence early on. And then I think one of the best decisions my parents ever made with me was to not require anything of me. I think it was around 14. They said, you can make your own choices now. And that was the right time for me to develop my own kind of follow my own evolution on that. It's just it's a label. It's a charged word, obviously for many. It's very important. And so hence my tendency would be to steer clear of that because there's too much meaning attached to it. And it's very difficult to have, a conversation beyond the strong beliefs that are attached to that. So I focus on terms like love, obviously, and recognizing that we live in a world and in an environment where if we behave, if we're in alignment with ourselves, if we turn our petals to the sun, each one of us has our unique gifts and petals, then we get rewarded instantly. There's no delay. There's no, you don't have to wait for Judgment Day. There's a one-to-one relationship to how we carry ourselves and how life then benefits us. And if we go against our grain, then we feel that hurt immediately. So it's really being true to yourself and your inner voice and being you, and then allowing that flow of life to take charge and lead us. And whatever label you put on, to what's behind all that, everyone's free to call it whatever they want. But in many ways, it's best not to call it anything, but just to experience it and just to live it.
Another word that we hear a lot is enlightenment. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, great question again. So I think there was I made a concerted effort to push back, if you will, a little bit on this idea that a person is enlightened and or not enlightened, that there's a switch, on-off switch, or these two categories of people. That's certainly not the case. It's a continuous experience. Everything leads to the next and informs. Environment is a direct reflection of who we are, and how we engage with it is we see the things that matter to us, that resonate with us, that we feel triggered by as well. And so out of all the possibilities of life around us, we respond in the ways that are a reflection of our inner makeup of where we are in our evolution. So one can never say that you're living a dull life or meaningless life or anything at all. It's every moment is packed with meaning and intention of revealing more to yourself of who you are. And it's true that very often we find direction by experiencing the things that don't resonate, that are unpleasant. But that's part of the system as well. It points us to what we do like and what does resonate. And so everything in life from the get-go is part of our enlightenment journey. And there comes a point where we become more aware of it, for sure. But it doesn't mean it hasn't been going on. It's always happening. It's always there. And so I use in the book, I use the phrase less realized energy and more realized energy. So, if we look at ourselves as energetic beings, is how much of ourselves have we realized and how much have we not yet realized? That we're literally, the word self-realization is realizing who we are. And I liken it to, a map of oneself and one's life, and how many of those areas, and that is encapsulated in our body. You mentioned the word body before. That really is where the wisdom and our true self lives. And so, how much of ourselves do we really know? How have we realized is there? Or how many blind spots are there that we still have to discover? And we discover them through our interactions with the world.
Talk to me about the last section in your book. You have the 4 steps to be you. You have been talking already, actually, the thought awareness, but you do have an exercise there. So 4 of them, thought awareness. The second is observe and release stuck feelings, and then listen to your inner voice. And then 4th, take clear action. You don't have to talk about all of them, because I would love for people to read your book. It's so clear. It's so heart-opening. It's just a real joy to... So talk to me about those 4 steps.
Okay. So really the first step is all we have to worry about, because the remaining 3 happen automatically. But it's essentially our attachment, our identification with our thoughts is blocking us from really being and experiencing our bodies. And that's where our feelings are. And that's where life passes through us. And so when we come out of that mind identified state, we're then in our bodies and able to experience things happening, our feelings. And it becomes very crucial that we don't cling to the sensations that we like and resist the ones that we don't, because then that pulls us back into our headspace of I like and I dislike, I want, I don't want, and judgment-based thinking, essentially. So in addition to the thought awareness that separates us from our thoughts, there's then the practice of self-observation, of observing your feelings as you experience them in your body. They're always somewhere. Usually in our stomach. Emotions are in the solar plexus area, heart chakra, obviously throat for things related to speaking up and our own voice. And so all these experiences of life are represented somewhere in our body. And that step 2 is really is giving it the space to be and not clinging to some and resisting others, because that's what keeps them stuck.
Right.
And so by observing those many layers of already stuck feelings that have, been generated just by living through the mind identified state, we give them space to be again, and that releases them, and then we start to flow, and then they leave us. But that happens automatically, just without when we come out of the head space, we're more in our bodies, and then we can feel what's happening much more adequately, and then from there we come out of reactivity. If we cling or resist, we're always in the state of reactivity and get pulled back into our head. But when we learn to observe, it really clears the way for that step 3, which is hearing our inner voice. So instead of those occasional intuitive hits that come through when we're in the mind identified state, instead that becomes a much stronger, louder, clearer voice. It's always there, always guides us, and we can trust it. We can let it guide us, and that just means we're no longer reactive. We're not reacting to good things and bad things, the things we deem to be good and bad, and that leads to clear action. We all know that don't hit send on that email when you're upset, because you'll say things that you might regret, right?
Yeah.
So we can only benefit from coming out of this reactive state, and then we see things clearly, and it also makes room for empathy to see what the other person is, what their situation is, and just everything gets better and more even keeled, and then with your inner voice in place, you can take action that really benefits. It's the right thing for the situation, which is very different from the mind identified state, which is always trying to do things that are right for you at the disregard of what other people's role in this might be. So every situation is created by everyone involved, and when you're connected to your inner voice, you see what the right thing to do is for the situation. And that is ultimately the right thing and best thing for yourself and everyone else.
I love the way you talk about, so you say, when you judge things, you give away your power. And you also say, all judgment is self-judgment. Talk to me for a moment about that, Chris.
Yeah. So everything we judge is right or wrong, again, is a reflection of ourselves. So if we say somebody is this or that, we're coming from our internal perspective. So we have a relationship inside of us with ourselves, and when we judge things on the outside, good and bad, it applies to good things as well, it's always a reflection of our internal makeup and what's going on inside of us. So that's the first thing, is to recognize that when we feel triggered and we judge people, judgment is commonly associated with negative judgment, but it applies to positive things too. So the mind judges things as either good or bad. So it applies to the full spectrum of assigning value to the things around us, and that's something the mind does all the time. That's how it operates.
True.
And that's what gets us into trouble, into duality, into separateness, and then cut off from our inner voice and our own GPS. So that creates most of the difficulty in life. So then there's a second thing that judgment does, and that is it creates distance. When it coming from a place of unity, that we're all expressions of life, unique and diverse, incredible diversity out there, but expressions of life. We have that in common. But when we judge things, we create that literally an energetic distance to essentially saying, I'm over here, and whatever I judge, good or bad, is over there. We're creating a separation in our minds, but also in our experience of life, of being separate from all the things that we judge, and good and bad. And that's where depression and loneliness and some of these most difficult emotions that we experience come from feeling separate and not recognizing this that we are just an incredibly meant to flourish expression of all of life. And the judging aspect of the mind is what creates, I think, most of the difficulties for us.
There's so much wisdom in your book, so much. I have so many quotes here and not enough time to go through everything. Some of the ones that really caught my attention, everything that I have been asking you questions about, and also when you say life wants you to be you, that's powerful. It really makes us see clear and really come back to the breath, to the body, to life itself. To be you is to be abundant. That's another powerful message. So you have so many of them. I love your work, absolutely love your work. And I love the way, we're almost at the end and I have so many things here. I don't want to stop. Death, that's another one, losing the body. You say any stock feelings that remain live on in their impact on the people around you, just like you have been impacted by the stock feelings of others before you. Your greatest gift to the ones you leave behind is your full acceptance of the end of your physical life. To be at peace at the time of your passing is to leave behind a legacy of compassion, love, honor, and dignity. Since the beginning of the conversation, I'm like, I want to get to this. I want to talk about this. Talk to me about losing the physical body. This understanding of who we are have made you not afraid of losing the body?
Yeah. So one of the unintended consequences of really being in your body and being in the flow of life is that the largely mental constructs of time, of past and future, fade into the background. They're still there for the basic physicality of our existence and for practical and organizational matters. But this idea that there's a beginning and an end starts to fade away. And so you experience yourself when you are being you and you're being authentic and you're living in that alignment with your inner voice, you start to experience yourself as continuous. And so the fears of a beginning and an end and what's after, all of this just falls away. It's not about explaining it away.
Right.
It's just not part of your experience any longer. So in this continuity, you just recognize yourself as infinite and most important, it's okay to be with. You're okay with living with the unknown. I don't know what happens after the body. If we leave our body and all that, but it's okay to be in a state of not knowing. Mm-hmm. And so again, great peace and comfort comes from being in that state. You just don't have to worry about these things and try to explain them away all the time.
And this is one of the ideas and concepts that I still kind of try to explore, is the afterlife or life after life, really, and what happens to consciousness. And because I interview a lot of people about the soul's journey and how people who are left behind still can sense and feel people who have passed, and they can talk to them, mediums and all these professionals. Do you want to make a comment about that, the soul's journey and the afterlife?
Sure.
That's fun.
Yes, this is the fun stuff. There's no doubt that everyone has a different range of skills and sensitivities to energy, and so while I'm not one of these super clairvoyant, connected beings that can just read energy and detect maybe say an illness in somebody or know what happens beyond that. I can certainly recognize that there's the term of an old soul. We've heard of that, and I think many people can relate to that. You meet somebody and you just sense that there's a depth to them. That they've just been around for a long time. So I do touch on this in the book, in that there's the energy that we're comprised of. So there's our physical body, but then there's an internal energetic makeup that we carry. And that really is our primary responsibility, is to realize more of ourselves. It's the process of the journey of self-realization is just becoming more and more self-aware. And that changes the quality of the energy that we carry, and we become even older souls, if you will.
Yeah.
And we react less to our environment, and through that reaction is what you just wrote or read from the book, is we leave behind less friction and less steering and controlling and needing the world to be different type of energy, and we leave behind more of that peaceful, unifying, living in the abundance of life unfolding type of energy. And so where it's all headed, and at the very end, I don't know, but we do have, that is our primary purpose here, is to become more self-realized, and thus collectively we realize, who we are and what we're doing. So, I think the bodies fall away, and then that whatever energetic makeup is we leave behind, it carries, it lives on in others, and it'll be up to them then to realize themselves even more, and it's really a return to love, essentially.
So I have a few more questions for you, the ending questions. Would you like to add anything or read a passage in your book, Chris?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think the most important thing is this applies to young people as well as as we become more conditioned to kind of live a certain expected life as we get older, to recognize that everything is part of the journey. Self-realization is not an end point. It's in the subtitle. It's a journey, and so it's to recognize that everything gets a little easier. Life gets a little easier, even the toughest situations, when we keep in mind that it's meant to help us self-reflect ultimately. In the moment, things may look a certain way. Often, we don't understand why they're happening. But with just a little extra step back, a little bigger picture, things become very clear that it's always us reacting and responding to the world around us. And so it's always a reflection of who we are at that point in time. And there's no need to be fearful or upset or think that we can fail or misstep. Everything really is going according to plan and unfolding the way it needs to.
One more question for you, the final question. What are 3 things about life you wish everyone would know before they lose the body?
Oh, that's great. I have to think about that for a second.
Well, I don't know about thinking. Probably not.
Yes. So I think it's the things that come to mind would be the last 3 words, essentially, of the book, and the alignment with happiness is at the most basic level is our foundation. It's not something we need to create. It's always there, and it's just we need to get the things that prevent us from connecting to that out of the way, which is mostly our conditioned thoughts and beliefs. So we are, in essence, at our being, at our root, happy beings. And in alignment with that is the second thing is feeling free, and everything becomes restricted when we do things and live towards certain outcomes that restrict the flow of that natural happiness and natural abundance that's at the root of us. And we feel that immediately when we do things that are not our truth. And unfortunately, we often don't listen, but it's there. And so this is not a mystery. It's our bodies are telling us, life is telling us to be free and be ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then really, and that's the third point, is the ultimate experience of joy and happiness and abundance and infinity and love and compassion and unity comes from recognizing who you are, being you, and then that turns into really the recognition of being us as one.
Thank you so much for sharing this profound wisdom, for the beautiful work you're doing in the world, in this reality, and everything else in between. Wow, Chris, yeah, it's beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful work as well, Valeria. When we first connected, I was really looking forward to this, and I was trying to get on your calendar even sooner. So thank you for making that happen, and I hope we could do it again. It's been an amazing part of my journey.
Yes, thank you for the encouragement. Where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
Yes. So my main website, Ciraq.com. But the book is available on all the main platforms: Amazon, Apple, Google, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble, and both as paperback and ebook. And very active on social, so all the social platforms, you can find me there. And then I'm also available for personal coaching and other fun projects.
Yes, wonderful. I'll have those links on your podcast profile too. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Valeria. Talk soon.
Bye for now, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Chris Ciraq and his work, please visit Ciraq.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.